wrote the book Decolonizing Wealth, and Don Mahi, and you'll see a link to Edgar's website there. One of the things that Edgar talked a lot about in his session, being a person who himself works in philanthropy, was basically how do we make the shift in philanthropy to truth, reconciliation, and healing from the trauma of colonization, and how do we educate, how do we do radical reparative giving, he called it, and also change the narrative around this. So essentially he talked about, you know, how the efforts at the nationwide level are going to really shift that paradigm and get funders to really understand that essentially the wealth that we have now accumulated is really based in trauma, and that there's a healing process that needs to happen. And he shares more on his website about sort of the ways that that might work. But we also paired that with a session called Change, Not Charity, which featured Mickey Hui Hui and Matthew Kaulana Ing from Hawaii People's Fund, where they shared about local efforts that we're working on, that sort of radical reparative giving, if you will, to efforts that are happening here in Hawaii. So that was an amazing session as well, where we heard from the two of them and really looked at what's happening here in Hawaii locally. And then sort of just another session that I wanted to lift up was one that was about reimagining boards, where we had Ann Wallstad from Board Source and Ku'ulani Keahokalole from People Strategies Hawaii, who were talking story with each other about, you know, what would happen if we actually reimagined how our boards work. And if we thought about, you know, different ways in which an equity mindset could support the board work and the organization, thinking about the purpose before just the organization itself, really respecting the ecosystem that we work in, looking at not reinforcing systemic inequities, and then really they talked about sort of this idea of authorized voice and power. So those who are impacted by our work, how do we incorporate, how do we hear from, how do we include those voices on the board so that as we're making key decisions for our organizations, they're informed by that authorized voice and power. So you'll see a link there to Board Source and also to Ku'ulani's company, People Strategies Hawaii. Ku'u has actually been working with Hano on our own journey around diversity, equity, inclusion, and she's an amazing facilitator. So if you don't know her, she's definitely someone that you'd want to get to know. Next slide. So essentially, I wanted to wrap up by saying, you know, I really encourage, if you're interested in any of the things that I've shared about these issues and these challenges that we're, as Hano and the folks that work with us, trying to tackle together, please join us, help us address these sector challenges. And then lastly, I just wanted to give us a few minutes. If anyone does have questions that have come up, I know I haven't been checking the chat, but I know that Leilani has been. So next slide. Any questions or reflections before I hand it off to Melissa? I know I went through a lot quickly. I want to give our other two presenters a good amount of time for their sections as well.
It looks like the only question we had was from Keisha Halbuna about including, like, she wanted the specific slide that showed the different things you need. But you included the link in the next slide, which was great.
Yeah.
And then if you could leave, like, how is it your last slide have your contact information? How can people reach out to Hano about these?
Excuse me. So next slide, yes, has the contact information. I know Lisa will share her specific contact information as well, but certainly anything that I covered in my section or that's around training, consulting, convenings, please feel free to reach out to me. Probably the best way right now is by email. My phone number is there as well, but email is the quickest way to get a hold of me. And I'm always happy to help share resources. If I don't know the answer, I'll try to find somebody who does for you. So yeah, we absolutely welcome that. Okay, so if those were the only questions, I'm going to go ahead and hand it off to Melissa. And now we can hear more about the resources that are available to support your mission and management.
Okay, thank you. Mahalo, Jan. Great presentation. So pleased to be here with you, Lisa, and everyone else today to share just a few resources that we hope have been or will be useful to you in your work to serve the community. Okay, so just starting off with a little bit about Skog Rasmussen. We are a consultancy based on Maui, but we're lucky to have clients across Hawaii and several other states in Japan, Australia, and in Canada. And so many of those include local and national nonprofits. So what I'm happy to do here is bring lessons learned from my work at the intersection of the three sectors. So it's 11 years as a congressional staffer in the House and Senate, including with our beloved Senator Daniel Akaka. We really do miss him. A year at a national nonprofit for youth mentoring, so I know what it's like to be on that other side. And then another more than 13 years in the private sector. And so that's been working on both government affairs and grants, including helping to advocate for Native Hawaiian federal grant programs. Okay. So what we're going to do today is hopefully will be a little bit of fun. It's sort of like speed dating meets SurveyMonkey on nonprofit resources, if you will. So for each of the 10 items or categories of items that I've included, we'll be doing two things. So first, I'll say a little bit about the resource in 2 to 5 slides, kind of let you absorb the information for just a bit. Then it'll be your turn to weigh in, for a few minutes in the chat with some feedback. So whether you've used the resource and would do it again, whether you're interested in using it and why, or, even if the resource isn't helpful or of interest to you and why, okay? So let's start. And we're going to start with a very broad category, which is federal training resources provided to you by the federal government. Okay. So for anyone who has looked for or applied to federal grants, for instance, this is your best friend, grants.gov. So not only are you able to search through any of the usually more than 2,000 funding opportunities, you're also able to come here to take short tutorials, read through helpful blogs, see templates, and do all kinds of other things in preparation for grant submission. Now, you may or may not know, we're talking about training and other resources from 26 distinct federal grant making agencies. And this is a little bit hard to see, but I know you're going to get the slides afterwards. So some of the relevant programs that directly fund Native Hawaiians or Native Hawaiian serving organizations are in the Department of Education, Health and Human Services, including the Administration for Native Americans, Department of Interior, Department of Housing and Urban Development, and many others. So some of these should be familiar to you. So this one is on ANA, Administration for Native Americans. This is a really great annual training session usually, and they have these things recorded as well. Federal agencies do these trainings because they really are interested in generating good grant applications, ones that really speak to the requirements and priorities of a grant program or the agency itself. So one of the things they will do to build capacity is to hold these detailed grant trainings, sometimes over several days, and then also provide technical assistance to help as you knit grants together. So again, it's a screenshot here of the ANA training and TA page, and Ka'anani Au has been the major resource here for the Pacific. We're really lucky. There are also many other agencies that hold grant webinars, podcasts, and other types of trainings. And one thing to note, though, these really are your federal taxpayer dollars at work. So if anyone is trying to charge you for these, that's just pilau. These trainings are free. And they can be great opportunities also to ask questions of federal program officers, or even just to see, what the potential competition may be if this is regarding a grant. You can see who else has signed on to this. Okay, so with that, it's your turn over the next couple of minutes. Do you already use federal information and training resources in your work? If yes, why so? If not, why not? And I'm not sure if we verified that there is the ability for people to kind of chime in and be recognized if they wanted to speak. I don't know that I see that. But if nothing else, please go ahead and start putting things in the chat. So again, this is a very broad category, and we'll go ahead and get a little bit more granular after the next one, but we'd love to hear what people are using. Thank you, Valerie. You are using it. I'd love to hear which resources you do rely on. And anyone else, if you want to chime in. I know that, there are also so many other data sources. I think I saw someone from Census on here a few minutes ago. So definitely census.gov, where you can find the community survey and some of these other sources for grant applications, or to express need, or even to see what applications you might need for the particular service area you're looking at. Okay. All right, why don't we go ahead and move on to the next one, which is another broad category. All right, so this is national organizations and associations that gather and publish a plethora of information. Okay, and sorry, just going back to Valerie, searching for grants and attending workshops. All right, that's great to hear. So here, let's just again go back to this broad category for .org. Here I've included some of the national Native focused or Native run opportunity nonprofit entities, and just a sampling of what they offer. So NCAI, or National Congress of American Indians, has policy briefs, other resources. NIEA, National Indian Education Association, has provided information on culture-based learning and other items. You have the National Indian Health Board and National Council of Urban Indian Health that have been especially busy during COVID. National American Indian Housing Council that runs legal and other compliance sessions on the housing side. The National Indian Child Welfare Association that focuses on children and families, and many others, of course, including CNHA as a major resource. You also have other national nonprofit entities that take a broader lens, but that are also conscious of the need to help Native Hawaiians and other Native communities, such as Jen talked about, the National Council of Nonprofits, of which Hawaii is an amazing member, that provides a wide range of resources, including several to help you with advocacy. And you also have national think tanks like the Coalition on Human Needs. This aggregates information about the impacts of federal policies, for instance, on various communities, and the Center on Budget and Policy Priorities, which Appleseed locally is a part of, and many others. So there are many nonprofits and associations like this. And in fact, you could probably find one for just about every health condition, every profession, every industry. There's just so much out there. Okay. Finally, one other set of national organizations to spotlight are professional grants organizations. So I'm a member of GPA, or the Grant Professionals Association, which is the body that sets forth and upholds the industry standards for grant writers. So it's kind of similar in function to also the American Grant Writers Association. These have blogs, they have articles, discussion boards, and other resources for nonprofits to get even better at competing for funding. Okay, so with that, do you rely on national organizations like these and associations? Again, this is a very broad topic. Want to see what people are using out there. Do you go to trainings? Do you do webinars and other events? Do you subscribe to their e-newsletters? I'll kind of give you a couple minutes to do this. And I know this is a loaded question, just given how many types of organizations are out there and what types of mission areas that they cover. But again, we'd just like to get you all warmed up for maybe the more local resources that we're going to go into in a second. I kind of wish they had those 3 dots, that kind of show you if people are typing. I like that, I send something to my teenager and I just wonder, is she gotten this? And if, the 3 dots pop up, okay. Hopefully the answer is not what? Hopefully it's something that makes sense. Okay, Leilani, thank you. Yep, that figures. The e-newsletters are great, just sort of this passive way you can catch up, and especially with the different time zones and everything, to be able to figure out what people are doing ahead of when we all wake up here, right? Okay. All right, let's get into stuff that's more local now then. And this is the first of several Hano resources that is available to Hawaii nonprofits. So I'm going to go through a few of those in a bit. So this is a screenshot from the COVID-19 Resources for Nonprofits page. And you find several things here. So including, as you see at the top, Hano's Hawaii Sector Pulse report that shows you what's going on in the sector overall, and a report that I was privileged to lead, which captured lessons learned out of the CARES Act funding implementation. Hano also posts information about the resources available from federal COVID stimulus packages. And we know that there are several that have come through. The bipartisan infrastructure piece just passed, and it actually does have resources for nonprofits in there. And then we're also looking forward to the Build Back Better package. Hopefully they can get that through and make that a nice Christmas present. But those, of course, contain just major investments in our communities and which continue to flow. So on this page, these are other items to help Hawaii nonprofits navigate the pandemic. So a lot of back office, front office, and other things to consider as we continue to recover from the pandemic. Some tips on compliance with various federal laws, some vaccine-related information, and also information aggregated from other states. Lisa or Jen, is there anything you want to add here before we ask for opinions? No? Okay. So here again, we'd love to hear from you all. If anyone has gone to the HANO COVID-19 resource page for information and training, if you think this is something that would be useful to your organization, I'd love to just give you a minute to chime in. And thank you, Lisa, for posting the link in the chat, because then people can kind of go through that. But you also get this, you get the slideshow afterwards. Yeah. Definitely hope more people will use this page now. Okay. I think I've gotten the after lunch crowd. Oh, now feel free to chime in the chat when you can. All right. So let's go to the next one, which is the Hawaii State Bar Foundation. This is from the legal sector. So what they're doing is currently sponsoring what they have termed the Pandemic Education Program. And this is to make sure that nonprofits have the information needed to effectively use and remain compliant when working with federal relief funds, or also around decisions you might make around pandemic operations in general. So some of the recorded sessions are here, listed here, and they're at the HSBF site. So information for those taking advantage of small business administration relief funding, a helpful checklist for pandemic survival, which Jen presented, and also one on federal grant compliance with processes and tips, which I was able to present, and then several others. But a note to you is that the series is still open. So if you have other topics you'd like to suggest, you can feel free to do that directly and go to HSBF. Okay, so here's your chance to put feedback in here. Have you heard of this at all? As Jen says, the trainings are great, free on-demand webinars. Okay. I'm going to take the silence as maybe this is something that you guys can go ahead and check out on your own. All right. This one is another HANO program, and this is for nonprofits that are specifically aimed at applying to federal grants. And I'm happy to have the chance to be the main consultant for this program. Okay, this is where on the HANO website you can find information about the program and an application to apply. And HANO Grants Corner is a great resource in general, and I'll show you at least one other thing that's on here. It was started by HANO to respond to the needs of nonprofits for technical help as they're submitting perhaps their first federal grant, or perhaps a grant to an agency with which you're unfamiliar, or to a new program. But however it goes, this program hopes to increase the overall amount of external government funding coming to Hawaii to meet community needs. Okay. The main points about GTest, as we call it, is that the services are offered at no charge to qualified nonprofits. And again, it hopes to bring our nonprofits to a higher level of success when it comes to federal grants, which are already very competitive, as we all know. It creates connections for nonprofits to experts in the community who can help with a wide range of expertise when it comes to grants. And it also encourages key themes of collaboration between entities within the sector and also across sectors. Finally, it encourages mindfulness around diversity, equity, and inclusion, as Jen talked about, as people are knitting grant applications together. So those are some key themes. Okay, this next slide shows you the steps in the GTest process, and there are still slots open for the second round that we're running currently. So first, you can go to the Hano Grants Corner on the Hano website, find the application there. Thank you, Lisa, for posting the link. And so what that does is it asks for basic information about your organization, what program you're targeting, what idea you're looking to submit, and some other pertinent information. Our team then meets on a regular basis, a weekly basis, to evaluate applications and confirm entries into the program. Once we have that, then we match the participant organizations with TA providers who have the relevant background and experience for the submission. Then we enter into the engagement. And so, it's coaching to help with fit to the grant opportunity. It could be a section by section review of the portions of the application, maybe the narrative, the work plan, the logic model, and other pieces that really look at the responsiveness to the funding announcement. We can also provide editing where needed, or there have been questions that have come up with for help with legal or accounting or type budgeting type issues that may arise as you go through the grant application. So it's a nice flexible menu of assistance. So this it's a little bit hard to see, but this shows the types of federal agencies that have been targeted by our program participants. And you see that it's in a range. It's economic development, anti-recidivism and reentry, community composting, another one, which was funded, by the way, for a collaboration that was led by the City and County of Honolulu in combination with Aloha Harvest and others focusing on Chinatown, and also digital humanities resources. So we're seeing the same kind of diversity that you see here in the second round, and we really do hope to welcome other applicants as well. But there have been several Native Hawaiian serving institutions and organizations. Okay. Wanted to find out if anyone is up for possibly entering the second round. We have had some really great testimonials from those that have participated. A lot of them are raring to go to put another application in, but we'd like to give new organizations a chance first. And so if you want to apply, feel free to go to the site, again, at Hano Grants Corner, and fill out the application. Or if you know others you want to refer, please feel free to do that as well. But any thoughts on this? Thank you, Jen. Yep, the application is open now. We encourage you to apply if you're considering a federal grant. We do have a team of amazing consultants. Okay. So, thank you, Kainoa. We'll look into it. Excellent. That's wonderful. And then if you have any questions, I'll have my contact information at the end, and you can feel free to email me. Okay. Grant opportunities list. So this next resource speaks to issues nonprofits have with prospecting for funding opportunities, which we know can be difficult to do. Your head's down in the middle of running your program, just trying to keep things going, and how do you then pull yourself out of that and actively look for funding opportunities? So this is a list we put together weekly, and Hano puts select new opportunities from it in its weekly e-newsletter. So feel free to subscribe to that again, as well as post the list on the website. And this is where it is with the red arrow. You can see that at Grants Corner again. Okay. And this is just a screenshot, the first page. There are usually so many opportunities, and sometimes we have more than 60 pages of opportunities. And this is federal, it's national, local foundations, regional foundations, some corporate opportunities, but it's a real mix curated for those who are in the nonprofit sector here. And so you can see that we also keep a tally where we have the running total of program funding, where the totals are available, and it's almost $22 billion open for competition. I mean, that's just staggering to me that is available. And if we can get really good at that, we can be bringing so many more resources home to Hawaii. So we've kept this list relatively low tech, but hopefully we'll have some solutions that would make it easier to search. But right now, feel free to go in there, and you can do that with keywords. Okay. Just advancing it. All right. So This is just to give you an idea. These are some of the sources that I regularly monitor to put these lists together, sometimes on a daily basis, just to populate the grants list. Of course, there's grants.gov that I talked about earlier. There's also the Federal Register, which has sometimes opportunities posted earlier than they're posted on grants.gov. You also have individual federal agency sites. And so I have just one of them there for HHS, but every federal agency usually has a good grant section in there. You can find out about open opportunities, ones that are coming, maybe awards that have been made. You can also sign up for e-newsletters from these agencies and other funders. And then also there's a lot of philanthropic sources like GrantStation and Candid. I also hear of funding opportunities to various other sources, as noted in the brown box. But again, this is sort of an open source list that I keep. And if anyone has things and then they send it to me, say the Thursday before the Friday publication, then I'll include them in the list. So bottom line, there are a lot of different resources for this, and we have aggregated them for you in the list. So it sounds like already we've got some feedback. Kehalani finds this would be very helpful. So thank you for that. And Ginger as well. Great. Yeah, I always wonder who sees this. I know it gets forwarded quite a bit. Thank you, Sid. Thank you for amazing resources. Excellent. Okay. Any other feedback? Feel free to continue to post. Okay. This one is a data resource site to put on your radar in case you don't already have it there, and that's the Hawaii Policy Map. So what it is a feature of the Hawaii Data Collaborative in combination with the Weinberg Foundation. And what it does is aggregate many different data sets from many sources that will provide you a visual representation of exactly what's out there and a little bit of ground truthing. So for example, this is a screenshot of the data aggregation showing the percentage of people who are Native Hawaiian and other Pacific Islander in the 2020 census. And what I've done here is focus in on Maui County. So what you get, and again, this is one example of many, but what you get is a nice graphic that could be put into reports, into grant applications, and the like. I'll show you another example here. This is seniors. So the kupuna, those 65 or older that were between the years 2015 and 2019 in parts of Oahu. So you can kind of see the gradient there and figure out maybe where your nonprofit needs to target resources and whatnot. And I know, intuitively, you probably know a lot of this, but, it's a different thing to be able to see it in front of you. So nonprofits could use this information to make all kinds of decisions about how to find additional assistance or target additional assistance and that kind of thing. So even if you don't have immediate needs for information, it's really interesting to play around in it. And I know they keep on adding additional sources as well. So thank you, Kainoa. So huge resource. Yeah, it is. And, it's been recommended to me by HUD. So we know that, that's at least one of the agencies that's participating, as well as Census and several others. So great. Thank you, Leilani. Okay. Now let's talk about Kaluulu Switchboard, which has been such an important connector, especially in COVID. So this has been an excellent tech-based solution to match seekers and offerers of different services and programs and other things based on a number of different resource sets. And this is a service that Hano launched at the beginning of the pandemic and then relaunched just a couple of months ago. And so this is sort of the basic piece, ask and offer. So they keep it fairly basic, so it's very easy to use. In general, you can search for something, whether it's even supplies or equipment or services. Perhaps you have a job post to post, or you're looking for a job. There are ways to ask for things and to offer things to the greater community, just depending on what your abilities are and what your needs are. So here's an example of the types of things posted. The first is a job description for Kaluulu itself. I'm not sure if it's been filled yet, but the switchboard has been looking for a director. The second is on the U.S. Department of Energy Technical Assistance Program for local communities looking for help overcoming environmental justice issues. So, converting to low emission solutions, that kind of thing. And you can also see trainings posted here. And so there are other things that could find a place here as well. For instance, like the Constituent Relationship Management Services or Salesforce by Nakupuna, Purple Maya, other things, again, job postings, or maybe a school just needs a certain number of supplies and something. Really, so many things that are in there. It's really interesting. So I encourage you to go to the switchboard and see the things that are there in case you need something or are able to offer something. So any feedback on this one? Has anyone used this? Anyone maybe looking to use this? Did you already know about it? New to me, okay. Did not know, wanted to use it. Excellent, okay. Interested to look more into it. Thank you so much for posting that. Ginger just heard about it recently. Okay, thank you for that feedback. All right. So just a couple more items to go through. And this one is about consultants. So those who are experienced and familiar with nonprofits and who want to work with nonprofits. So the first thing I'll spotlight is Hano's consulting services. Luckily, we have the main point of contact here, and that Jen runs a suite of services. So if she's got anything to add, I'll try to do it justice, but it's a broad range of offerings to help organizations build capacity or add to their capacity, whether looking to attack a specific problem, to work on plans maybe for the future of the organization, or work on changes in organization key staff or leadership. However, you need the help, Hano can assist in those ways. And so what this does is show different buckets in which Hano provides services here. So nonprofit board development, as Jennifer mentioned, helps with effective board governance. There's also strategic and operational planning, and this helps to guide strategic thinking and planning and develop clear goals, objectives, and action steps for the organization. Succession planning and executive transition support. This helps to prepare your organization for transitions whenever they occur, or navigate through the departure of a former leader, perhaps arrival of a new leader. Facilitation is professional support for planning processes, collaborative conversations, and problem solving. And Jen is really amazing in that. Outcomes design addresses outcomes development at all system levels. So individual, programmatic, agency, community. And then finally, professional development is where trainings are offered on demand to support a variety of staff needs. So, and just a little note here, again, this is the Board Leadership Institute that Jen mentioned. This is just to show it. Hano's services really are quite integrated. So, just another example of how Hano is taking the overall view of what nonprofits need. Okay. Another resource I wanted to talk about is this Hawaii Community Benefit Consultants resource. And I'm part of the leadership circle for this body, full disclosure. This is a statewide network of independent consultants, and it's created by Joyce Lee Ibarra. Just generally, we are fairly like-minded individuals who are dedicated to working toward the good of the community as a whole. We serve a wide variety of clients, a lot of different missions, varied needs, varied goals. And we operate in a number of different areas. Some of them are listed here. So, leadership staff development, program design and strategy, organizational strategic planning. And you can read through this. There are really a lot of different areas that our TA providers or our consultants can play in. And again, they're tailored to nonprofits because they know how to work with nonprofits. So what you can do is you can go to the site and either search the directory or use the pull down menus to find a consulting specialty or field of interest. A lot of great folks here. Okay. So your turn. I should actually say, would you use the Hano consultant service as well as the HCBC service? And I know it can be tricky trying to think about what place you might have in your organization for an outside consultant, some party that would come in. Oh, insert raising hand here. Okay, let's see. would you like to say a little bit more? Or okay, that's great. Thank you, Kehalani. Appreciate that. You know, it takes an interesting group of folks to work with nonprofits that have needs that are so relevant to the community, but that may be under-resourced. And these are folks who really have their heart in what, you know, this kind of work is and what we do. So, okay. No other feedback. Okay. The last thing, let's test the concept for a future offering. So what this is, it's called What's in Your Backpack. And this is hoping to, again, build capacity for those of you who are already government contractors and grantees, or perhaps are aspiring to be government grantees or contractors. This is a joint effort of HANO and the statewide nonprofit grants working group, which has been a continuation since February of this year, of those of us who are on the COVID CARES subcommittee under the Speaker's House COVID committee, and committed to continuing to enhance the government nonprofit relationship. But what we saw through the implementation of federal funding there were various pain points that organizations had experienced for a long time, you know, whether it's in applying, contracting and running programs, receiving payments and reporting, and the things that were needed to ensure much smoother processes. So what you see on this slide are the general goals for this readiness assessment that we would like to launch. And so, you know, figuring out whether the organizations have the basics to be a government grantee or contractor, and helping them with that assessment. So, you know, taking a look at the different personnel, the board, other assets, and things like that. And then figuring out what the goals are, you know, how they can align with a potential government partner, and then helping navigate the way to speak to the government entity, the government funder, and as well as work, you know, help on the workforce side as well. So, you know, this speaks to what we would do in a very high level. And, you know, looking to operationalize this maybe over the next several months. But first, what we would do is work with a nonprofit again to check its readiness. We would, you know, also, in addition to looking at their personnel and other assets, it would be about technological capabilities, financial capabilities, community supporters, and that kind of thing. And then after all of that, then we would try to figure out what is most useful to the nonprofit. And it could be any or all of these things. So it may be a roadmap that you might need in order to be more ready to enter into grants and contracts or handle additional grants and contracts. It could be training for any level of your organization to fill gaps in knowledge or gaps in experience. And then, you know, once you get to the point where maybe that sort of broader assistance isn't as useful, then technical assistance that could help, maybe with even back office operations, other operations, that kind of thing. But the idea overall is just to be able to ensure that the organization has what it needs to be competitive for funding opportunities and to be able to successfully execute them once awarded. So with that, again, very high level, this is something that's coming, but we'd love to see if any of you are interested in this kind of assistance, and or if not, let us know that as well. And this is the last one, so I can sit here and wait for a bit until people weigh in. My middle school daughter, she has a teacher that did that to us, and parents back to school night, she just sat there and looked at us until somebody actually said something. Mahalo, yes, okay. Great, thank you. So as this rolls out, you know, we will be providing additional opportunities to weigh in and contribute to the design of this. And we've already talked to some nonprofit partners, but we definitely want to put this out there with the ability to fully connect with all the needs that you've got, and you know, anything that might come going forward. So with that, I'd love to see if there are any questions before we take a short break and then tee up Lisa's presentation. Yep. No questions. Any Q&A? Okay, looks like we're good then. So Lisa, is it a 5-minute break you'd like to take?
Sure. Yeah, why don't we do that? Thank you, Melissa. And I guess I just want to throw props to Melissa Hamp, our federal consultant. You know, prior to hiring her, we really lacked a lot of this expertise around our federal programs, the ability to draw in federal resources. And so we're really appreciative of the partnership with her and Skog Rasmussen. And so mahalo, Melissa, for carrying the weight for us and actually, you know, sharing a lot of our resources. Jen and I are kind of shamed to toot our own horn. So
Very modest.
We appreciate that you highlighted
Absolutely.
all these free resources that we want more people to partake in. So, okay,
Thank
so
you.
we will take a 5-minute bathroom, bio break, water break, maybe, because this is kind of heady, technical, compliance related content. Maybe go run around the block or something, do like calisthenics and come back, and we'll see you in about 5 minutes. So
You might need some chocolate. Grab some chocolate.
snacks, you know, junk food, whatever's going to get you through this last hour with us. Good job, Jen and Melissa.
Thank you. Yeah, Melissa, very nice. Nice work there. Leilani, thank you so much for helping with my slides. I appreciate all of that support.
No problem. And in terms of sharing the slides, right, what we'll have everyone do who wants to see the slides again is on the left-hand side, at the very bottom, there's a thing that says replay. Once this session is over, the whole recording will go into that replay button area, and then you can rewatch it. In terms of slides, that's up to you guys if you want to have people over specific slides or stuff like that. But yeah,
sure,
you can watch it live.
Okay.
Mine is probably very large, so I'll PDF it, and then if anybody wants that, I'm happy to provide that.
Yeah, I can do the same. And Lisa, I'm sure as well.
Yeah. Great.
Perfect. I see
Yeah.
emails in chat for the slides. That sounds great. It might be better if we go ahead and have you guys email Melissa, Jennifer, or Lisa for their slides, and then to you through email.
Whoops. Jen, will you send my slides too, or should I put my email in? Yeah, okay.
Send both. Yeah.
Okay,
No problem.
Well, looks like Kaleo wants it provided her email.
Since we're still on a break, why don't we do some fun little icebreakers for everyone? Earlier, we asked where you guys are from. How about what is a song that you can't get out of your head right now?
Oh, oh shoot. I was just singing one this morning and I was like, how did that get in my head?
Well, when our lights went out last night, the girls just decided to down on Christmas carols. So it's all like everything's in there, and silver bells and deck the halls and everything. And like, no, I'm sorry, you're gonna have school tomorrow. You're gonna have to just, sing a few more and then go to sleep.
I got a break yesterday though, right? On Maui.
They did, yeah, they did.
Actually, were private schools closed too?
Yeah. So yeah, and my third grader, her school was closed today too because Pukalani still had power out. So hopefully tomorrow.
Hey, is that the same Jade who used to intern at Hano? Oh, different Jade. Well, we're at probably beyond a little bit of 5 minutes, and I hope everyone has their snacks and might need something stronger, alcohol too, maybe. Is it too early for Pohana? But I always have to apologize in advance for being the compliance lady here. And I always say that I never dreamed in my wildest dreams when I was growing up that I would be the tax compliance lady. But anyway, I'm Lisa Maruyama, and I'm with HANO, Hawaii Alliance of Nonprofit Organizations. I'm the caboose of this trio and catching you at a sleepy time. But thanks for sticking it out with us. And I hail from Nu'uanu, Oahu, and have been here for, 20 years, but formerly from Pearl City. And yeah, so anyway, we're so happy to be here. We thank, of course, CNHA for having us, and we appreciate our partnership with CNHA. So, okay, I'll start my presentation. And, for this particular segment, please feel free to interrupt. Like if you really want to ask a question, some of this is very technical information. And so, and I always assume that just because it's in my head, it's in everybody else's head too. And so if you need me to debunk something or need me to speed up or slow down, just let me know. It's always kind of hard to understand where people are in the spectrum of advocacy work. And one of the things that I do want to qualify also is, again, as Jen made it very clear at the beginning, this really is around nonprofit advocacy, right? So I know that here, many people who attend this convention are very seasoned and active in citizen advocacy. And so the distinction I really want to make is that in order to do it via a nonprofit organization, particularly a 501c3 charitable organization, there are, it's totally possible to lobby and to do this work. It's completely legal, but it has to be within bounds. And so today I'm going to talk a little bit about how you stay within those bounds in order to take your nonprofit, have your nonprofit's mission express your mission in very legal ways and to meet community good. Okay, so we'll start now. Hold on, I'm just going to get back to my screen here. Okay, so as Jen mentioned before, we're part of a national organization and a Washington, D.C. based national organization, National Council of Nonprofits. And as a result, they're able to track things that are going on the Hill. We now have gems like Melissa in our midst as one of our consultants who actually knows this inside and out as well. So she's tracking things here from Hawaii in addition, and she's got strong relationships with our congressional delegation. But it is nice to have our National Council of Nonprofits doing some of this Hill work on a daily basis. And as a result, we are one of 37 state associations of nonprofits across the country doing this kind of work for our very valuable nonprofit constituents. And it's a very, very collegial network. We share best practices, mana'o, and we learn so much from our peers. We're actually considered one of the smaller and younger state associations of nonprofits. So some of the other state associations are very sophisticated. They have like policy shops of like 5 to 10 people doing really interesting, policy work on behalf of the nonprofit sector. So, okay. Just a little context setting for all of you, again, for nonprofits, but what we always think about from where we sit at HANO, and while we don't see ourselves hierarchically at all, we do have a unique advantage of sitting somewhat on a hillside, kind of looking over the landscape of the nonprofit sector. And as a result, we see trends, we see patterns, we see struggles, we see successes. We can weave those stories together and tell those stories and express it to our external partners. And so this is the three-legged stool, and the community is really the seat of the stool. And the three legs are, one, there's a corporate for-profit sector, and the second leg is government, and the third leg is the independent or the third sector, which is our sector. And what I like about this particular picture is the legs are all the same length and the same width, and they're connected. And this is really how we need to be doing this kind of work in order for communities, the seat of the stool, to actually really thrive and flourish and create abundance. But oftentimes, the reality in this community and the way we see things, where we sit on our hillside at Hano, is that our leg is often shorter or hindered in some ways, or sometimes maybe not connected very well. And when we are not there, we don't have a leg, or we're not connected, the community falters and the community falls. And so this is just a very simple metaphor, simple picture to kind of demonstrate that we all share common goals. At the end of the day, yeah, we have different agendas, but we all want to see our communities healthier. And so we're working on that. And yet, this is, and I apologize, this is a pretty old slide. It's from 2010. It's from Hawaii Business Magazine. And it was their take on, at the time, who holds power in Hawaii. And the larger the bubble, the more influential. And again, this was from their perspective. And, the smaller purple bubbles were supposed to be emerging influences. But when you look at some of these bubbles, and you may agree or disagree with the size and the color and, positioning, whatever, but what do you notice? Who's missing, I guess, from this power chart? Just curious, like, if you could put it in chat. Just some of your observations. And I know it's small kind, but sorry. Any thoughts, any observations? Anybody there? Thank you, Sid. Oh, and Ginger. I should have brought prizes. But anyway, yes. There is no nonprofit sector bubble, and there's not even a little purple emerging one. So, and this is granted, this was in 2010, right? So things may have changed since then. And we would like to hope at Hano that we have played a role or held a presence in this community long enough that perhaps we've articulated the importance of the nonprofit sector. Who knows? But nevertheless, at this point in time, there wasn't a recognition that we're a unified force to be reckoned with. There are expressions of nonprofits in environmental efforts, Native Hawaiian efforts, even unions are a form of a nonprofit. They're not charitable nonprofits, but they're organized. They have a IRS tax status like we do. So there are expressions of it in these ways, but there isn't a recognition that we're unified and that we speak with one voice and that we're powerful and that we belong at the table. And yet, when you advance the slide here, some of this latest data actually shows that we're pretty much a force to be reckoned with. When we look at nonprofit employment, we're actually larger than manufacturing, construction, finance, insurance. We come in third. So we're a pretty sizable industry. And yet, there's not quite this recognition. And then in this slide, we show some dynamism, actually, even during the periods of the last recession of 2008 to about 2010 or 2011, we show the green bar being us. We show resilience and dynamism in very difficult times. And so our employment grew by 8.5% while not-for-profit employment declined. And these are the kinds of slides that we want all nonprofits to actually utilize to before they start talking about their mission, to actually start with something like this that actually collectively articulates kind of our influence. And then, of course, we're a major generator of revenue in annual wages, et cetera. And so we're an economic driver is really what we're trying to say. Again, coming in before these other major industries. And here, just for your benefit, I mean, just for the basic context, we have over 7,000 charitable organizations, 7.5 billion in revenue, 61,000 employees that actually rival state government. But of course, this is pre-pandemic. And so, you know, not sure what our sector, how many employees our sector has lost in the pandemic. Okay, for those of you who, can you maybe just put in the chat, are you already doing some form of advocacy? Are you, and if you are you newbies? Are you kind of like somewhat experienced, or are you pros? And can you put in in the chat box? Maybe not pros, how about seasoned? Okay. Great. And Ginger brings up a good point, right? There's so much movement within our sector, with as Jen mentioned, with talent, right, coming and going. And so even though we might have seasoned advocates on staff, there are always people that are new to this work. And so welcome. Okay. Great. Oh yeah, Adrian. Yes, of course, seasoned. She could be actually running this workshop. Anyway, shout out to Adrian there. Okay, so for some of you, I actually don't need to convince you to embrace advocacy. You're already doing it. So bear with me, some of you pros. But I wanted to, just so that we are level setting, define what advocacy means in this case and for the purpose of this workshop or this session. And it really can be self-advocacy, individual advocacy, or systems advocacy. And what I will say is, for the purposes of today, we're really talking about systems advocacy. We're talking about organizational advocacy as opposed to individual advocacy or self-advocacy. Different types of advocacy strategies, you know, are listed here. And it seems like you could do any or all. Okay. And, you know, why nonprofit advocacy? For those of you who are here in this room and are sitting on the fence or are a little bit concerned or have not been encouraged by leadership to do this work, and yet you feel in your bones you need to be doing this for your nonprofit, why nonprofit advocacy? This absolutely allows you to raise awareness. It strengthens the overall sector, not just your organization. It strengthens our communities through systems change. Sometimes it allows you to attract new board members, new stakeholders, new donors, because you're doing this new and different work. It positions you as a player and an expert with Mana'o. It helps us to expand. It helps us to hold government accountable, because as our partners in doing this work, and it also invests in government in the work that you're doing as a player, as a equal player. And it helps to address just bad laws and regulations that prohibit or inhibit you from being able to deliver on your mission. So there's a lot of different reasons to be doing this. And we often say that it's not enough, say, to be having your head down, doing your mission, advocating for just your mission, but it's important to look up and actually see the system in which your mission operates. You know, we often talk about that elephant, and the nonprofit sector is the elephant. And some people are working on the trunk, and some people working on the tail. And some people actually were so siloed sometimes in the nonprofit sector that we don't even realize that it's one, an elephant, and two, that other people are working on different parts of the elephant. And so where we sit at Hano, we just want to bring those silos down, ask everyone to look up and see that it's an elephant and that we want to work on this together, and let's be strategic about it. And let's also sometimes sing with one voice as we represent ourselves to the other two legs of the stool. This is kind of like a, the alternative is the for-profit book that Jim Collins put out, right? And so this one is the nonprofit version of like sort of best practices. And it's a little blurry because I stretched it out, but it's it in the book, it describes 6 sort of behaviors, characteristics of high impact nonprofits. And one of those behaviors and characteristics is doing advocacy. So the organization engages in both its mission delivery and advocacy at the same time. And then this is another book put out by Next Generation Donors, and they talk in this book a little bit about what they expect from their charitable nonprofit partners, and they really, whereas their previous generation of trustees and donors that sit on these foundation boards was a little, a little afraid of doing advocacy work, of speaking out. They find it a little, challenging for philanthropy to be involved. The next generation of donors, the younger family members, really want to see their charitable nonprofit partners get louder about the work that they're doing, to be more proactive in advancing their missions and in partnership with these donors. So that's encouraging. Jen talked a little bit about our business model at the beginning, the business model of the nonprofit sector. And here's one of the examples of what Hano actually is trying to like. So Jen talked about our true cost and full cost initiative. Well, when you think about it through an advocacy lens, this is kind of how we tell this story, right? So in the for-profit world, where all of us really, and this is an old slide because it's usually $5 for a 12-ounce latte at Starbucks, right? But we think nothing of walking in, some of us every day, to get our tall latte for nearly $5, knowing full well that only 26% of this actual cup of coffee is direct. So the coffee, steamed milk, whatever, the lid, the cup, whatever, right? And that 74% of that $5 actually goes to overhead and profit. And yet no one blinks an eye about giving Starbucks that. But in the nonprofit context, we have a very hard time articulating that. We tend to be apologetic for it. Oh, we've got all this overhead, but you don't have to pay for it. Well, yes, our partners, our funding partners, whether in government, philanthropy, individual donors, need to be paying for this overhead. There's no other way to provide quality service if overhead is not being covered. So these are some of the things that are, just to give an example of what's in our wheelhouse for the kinds of things we advocate for on behalf of the sector, the kinds of conversations we're trying to have with our funders, but also with the legislature, with the media, around these systemic challenges that really prevent us from, all of us really in the nonprofit sector, from doing good work. And then these are just some models, right? If you look at the left side, this is an old view, successful organization, right? So oftentimes when you look at the 990 tax form, you're looking for, if an organization has a high percentage of program expenses as opposed to admin and fundraising, then it's a healthy nonprofit, right? That's an old model. And so it encourages donors actually to just go right to funding programs and not funding management, admin, fundraising, et cetera, in order to perpetuate this idea of a healthy organization. Well, what we need to all be telling our donors is, to the right side, if you look at the right side model, is instead of funding a piece like of just some of the outside, right? Like the outside of this model are programs only, right? So we want to put our name on a building. We want to buy pencils. We want to, things that support just the program. Well, if you only fund the outside concentric circle and you don't fund actual deeply into the organization, into its core, if you're not paying for electricity, if you're not paying for internet access, if you're not paying for salaries and benefits, you're actually eroding the core of the organization over time. And the irony of it is, you're, as a donor, you're expecting a quality program, but you're actually not getting much over time because you're eroding the ability of that organization to provide that quality program. And so we need to be thinking and talking about this issue differently over time, all of us, not just Hano, around these issues as they come back to bite us every time. And just this slide, I won't go into. It's a little bit more of what I talked about. What are real costs? What are associated costs? Indirect, direct costs all have to be funded in order for us to basically be healthy. And then these things support strong fit finance and accounting, good human resources, board responsible, capable board governance, and basically an engaged and developed staff, right, over time. That results in quality. Okay, these are just some federal issues, and I have to admit these are like leftover issues that were residual of the Trump administration that kind of still are being addressed and sorted out, but actually have tremendous impact on nonprofit missions. And so I won't go through all of them. Some of them are fresh, just our right to life versus right to choice issues that are on our doorstep at the Supreme Court level. And, all of these other things that we are actually trying to address, this denial of climate change and the policies that kind of come with a denial of climate change affect our ability to address those issues here in Hawaii. Anyway, I won't go through all of them, but this is merely to say that there are a lot of the federal environment definitely affects our local and state environment, and really are causes for us to act. And then, I know there are many, many examples, even in this room, of the amazing advocacy work that you are all doing in your communities. But to kind of just speak to the different types of tools that we've used, the Yes on 4 Pre-K Keiki of a couple years ago was a ballot amendment initiative. And so nonprofits are able to introduce ballot amendments. And Blue Planet is, this example. Of course, they're still doing this campaign of kind of reducing our fossil fuel reliance by 2050 or something like that, right? But basically, they do education in the schools. They do a mix of public policy at the legislature. They work with the PUC. So they're an example of multiple strategies that they're employing in order to get to their goal, right? Their mission goal. And then Hawaii Appleseed Center is an example of an organization that is not afraid to use litigation in order to move forward on systems advocacy. And they have a policy research center. And I will say that I think what we could all afford to be better at is data gathering around backing up, I guess, the kind of issues and public policies that we want to push forward. We have to back that up with not just good stories, compelling stories, but good data. And then, of course, the Sierra Club is working on a whole bunch of things statewide. But, of course, the most raw, recent, ripped from the headlines issue is, of course, our Red Hill tank security. And if you remember, the Sierra Club has kind of been the canary in the coal mine for years now, talking about this Red Hill issue. And so it's just very interesting that it's all coming to a head right now. But leave it to a nonprofit actually to have been the first to actually draw attention to this. And this is often the case for many of you doing really, really critical work in your communities. You're often the canary in the coal mine, giving a heads up to everybody else about the challenges in your communities. So kudos to all of you. All right, in order to do this work, and maybe I'll stop here. Are there any questions? Because I'm kind of just ramroding. I haven't had a chance to look at the chat.
I don't see any questions so far, Lisa.
Okay, alrighty, then I will forge on. This is kind of the important part, because I think what a lot of organizations tend to do is get really caught up in the emotion of an issue, especially if it's completely in our kuleana, our wheelhouse, to actually step forward and say something, because it's so particular, it's specific to our mission, et cetera. And we tend to step forward without really kind of making sure our shop is cleaned up and ready to do this kind of work on the, we're saying things on the external, but then we're not really ready on the internal part. So preparing your organization. It's really critical that throughout the organization, at all levels, board, staff, throughout, actually ask themselves these questions, right? So review the existing law. It's kind of like where you're starting today, is to understand what our compliance is around the work, this work for advocacy work for nonprofits. Is what's the law? What can you do? What can't you do? The board of directors needs to come along with this, to understand these issues as well. Reviewing your relationship with government. So if you already have a government contract, if you have these relationships, if you rely on the legislature for the GIA, the granting aid, how do you feel? How do your board and staff feel about basically possibly criticizing government, stepping forward and being critical of a bill or something that affects a department that might actually be one of your government contractors? So really asking yourselves, what are you willing to say? What are you willing to do? And being, having clarity about that at board and staff levels. Really, really sorry, the UPS guys coming down my lane, but please, please, please consider creating a public policy or an advocacy committee out of your board. Definitely board members need to be deep in this with you. And then developing an agenda and priorities. That's it's a document that you give out externally. You have it on your website. You can give it to any media person who asks, any donors. It's just very clear what your agenda is going to be like. And then if you can hire the expertise from within staff and or an external lobbyist, great, but really designating somebody to be focused on this work. And then making sure that the culture is infused, the culture that embraces advocacy is built and cooked into the DNA of your organization. It's not just this ancillary activity that sometimes you do, sometimes you don't. And that confuses your constituency as well. So being willing to do this consistently and really making it a true, authentic part of your DNA. And then, of course, here are just some resources for preparing your board. And like I said, it's very important to bring your board along, right? We've heard so many executives come to us and say, my board told me that I can't lobby because it's illegal. So I'm not going to show up at the legislature, or I can't say this, or I can't engage in your sign-on letter. I can't show up at your candidate forum. No, you may absolutely engage in this activity. So board members need to be brought along for some of this in education as well. And then also, just not making, again, this like a peripheral role to the board, like making it a key activity of the board, something that the board investigates and thinks about it practically at every board meeting. And then being able to do the fundraising for this work. That having your support from board members who can actually articulate this with donors as to why it's important to do this work. And then Stand for Your Mission is a great resource for helping your board to understand its parameters to do this work. This is just an example of Hano's, we used to be called the Public Policy Committee, but we changed it to advocacy because it's not just, we think that our work in this realm is not just policy or public policy. It's really about public education. It's really about collaborations. It's about networking, building our network, building relationships with those who are either going to be our strategic partners or understanding who might be opposed to our issues. So it's about advocacy, I think, encompasses a much broader kind of book of work for Hano. And this is just when you recruit board members, this is a job description really for the committee. To articulate very clearly what our expectations are going to be of board members in this regard. And then this is our external advocacy policy that we share with anybody. I believe it's on our website as well. And this is where we will say, like, sometimes legislators get confused and they call us and they want us to weigh in on like a homelessness matter, and we often have to say, sorry, please go to the organization, the Homeless Coalition, or to the, Focused, which is the Health and Human Service Advocacy Organization. We really Hano is at the sector level, right? Taxes, regulations, governance, those types of things, right? And you'll see at the bottom, and I know this is really small, but you'll see that our criteria that we have for ourselves is fit, impact, support, credibility, responsibility. Who else is doing this? Are we the only ones being looked to do this? Is this a good fit? Does this apply to most of our members or just a few small? Anyway, these are the things that we ask ourselves before we engage in an issue. But for the most part, it's sector level topics that will resonate with our constituency regardless of mission. Okay, evaluating. So in this arena, like unlike other parts of nonprofit operations where, like if you're doing program delivery, when you have a foundation, they often tell you, it's not enough to articulate back to us all your effort. We really actually want to know what your outcome is. So how were your constituents better off as a result of your efforts? So don't tell us about your efforts, tell us about your outcomes, right? In this arena, advocacy is kind of new, right, in the nonprofit sector. I mean, it's not new in the history of Hawaii, but it's new in the work that how nonprofits do this work, right? And so funders, if they are willing to fund advocacy, because many private philanthropic foundations are not that comfortable funding, if they are willing to, they will look at, it's not so much like the outcome, like they don't expect that you're going to get that bill passed in 1 year. Sometimes large scale community-wide efforts, where you're seeing radical change over time, sometimes take a decade. When we think about suffrage, when we think about civil rights, those things, we're still struggling with our civil rights issues, right? So these things take decades. And so a funder is not necessarily looking for you to like totally be successful out of the gate, but they are looking for how you're building your capacity in the meantime, right? Have you picked up more partners in this arena? Are you strengthening your alliances? Have you cleaned up your internal policies? Is your board along for the ride, et cetera? All of those types of things, right? And if you can articulate that, then the chances are you'll continue to get, funding from these organizations. And then I really like this cool matrix. And this is kind of like, bear with me, it's a little nerdy, a little wonky, but on the y-axis, it measures, the awareness and the action, like awareness at the bottom, going all the way to somebody's going to act on this as a result, right? And on the x-axis, you'll see that, early on in the axis, you're reaching general public, but as you move out further down the axis, you're actually reaching decision makers. And so this chart kind of plots tools, advocacy tools that one might employ for their project or for their issue. And it kind of places it so that you can understand, if you do this act, actually, how will it impact, right? And it's not linear. You don't have to start at the beginning and, there's no beginning and there's no end. It just gives you a better framework of what you're doing when you do this when you use this kind of tool, right? And some of you might always stay in the lower part of the Y and X axis, where you're trying to do voter engagement. You're trying to do general public education. And some of you will always stay there. And some of you may actually, without even knowing how, might find yourselves in litigation. And so this isn't step 1, step 2, but this is a nice framework and a nice way to articulate to your donors exactly what you're trying to do and what you're trying to achieve. Okay. I'm just going to stop to see, has there been any questions particularly about that matrix or about how we evaluate advocacy? Relationships with donors. I'm just curious, do any of you have relationships with donors who are willing to fund your advocacy work? You don't have to tell us who your donor is, because then we're all going to try apply. But just tell us yes or no. And by donor, I mean it could be, oh great, Sid. We need to get Sid a prize. She's been our cheerleader. Anyway, thank you. Yeah. And by donor, I mean it could be an individual donor. It could be, probably not government, but could be private philanthropy. Yeah. Okay. Great. Yeah. And sorry, Kainoa. Okay, moving on. Just letting you know that the rest of this, I'm not an attorney. Any kind of legal advice that you would like, please seek this from a professional. So these are just to level set. We are, just to be very clear, we are all able to lobby. Lobby has kind of a negative connotation, or like you always just think, oh, that's just for like tobacco lobby or whatever, right? No, I mean, you can be doing wonderful apple pie and motherhood type things while lobbying. And so, there's such a stigma to it that like people are afraid to be transparent about it, to register with the Ethics Commission. And where we sit at Hano is it doesn't hurt. Just do it. Just register, and sort of if you're going to do any modicum of this work, just do it. So here's different definitions, right? There's going to be federal, state, local definitions of lobbying. This is what makes it challenging for us to be compliant. It's very complex. And then tracking, reporting, making sure that you're reporting this on your IRS form, and making sure you're consulting experts. The IRS definition is this, right? So there's a difference between direct lobbying and grassroots lobbying. And so when you're actually setting out to do federal lobbying, you basically, any lobbying, because you're reporting all types of lobbying to the IRS, you're basically separating out your time in terms of direct lobbying when you're actually asking somebody, a public official, to go your way, versus grassroots lobbying when you're actually just providing general education, you're getting the word out, basically, right? So there's a subtle difference between these two activities. That's IRS. And then the IRS actually has like a litmus test, and it's called the 501H form, which helps you to understand what is a substantial part of lobbying activity that's part of your organization's activities. And I encourage everyone to fill out the 501H election. It's very easy. And all it does is it's filed in perpetuity. So you file it once with your organization. And all it does is it tells the IRS that you are basically transparently going to do this work and that you will report on it. And this is what the form looks like. It's super easy. Just name of organization, address, your tax number, a signature, and date. And basically going forward, you are just clear. You filed the 501H election, and it basically just articulates that you're going to be doing this kind of work. So the Federal Lobbying Disclosure Act has these stipulations. And again, these slides will be shared, so don't, it'll be at your disposal later. But basically 20% of an employee's time over a 3-month period, and spending more than $12,500 on lobbying in a calendar quarter actually does require you to report all of that per this Federal Lobbying Disclosure Act. The state has a different set of thresholds. This is regulated by the Hawaii State Ethics Commission. You must register as a lobbyist if you are spending more than 5 hours in a month of a reporting period, and also spending more than $1,000 during any reporting period. And the Ethics Commission has different reporting periods, and so you kind of have to follow their timeline, basically, which is on their website. And Yeah. And so these are their thresholds. And this is where we say that if there's any question, you know, if you're kind of coming up on those thresholds and you're trying to sort of nickel and dime on the hours and things like that, just file. It doesn't hurt to actually just have a regular filing with the State Ethics Commission. And then this is their definition, their legal definition by Act 051. And then what they did in 2017 is modified, clarified that when you are working on a grant application for Chapter 42F is any procurement, any contract with state government. If you're working on that, that's not subject to lobbying time. You're not lobbying. You're just preparing your proposal or your grant application for submittal to government. There was a lot of confusion around whether that constituted lobbying. And then just a reminder that there's a gifts law. No public official is able to take any gifts from us. And before it was, you know, like 25, like they called it the gifts of aloha, right? That you could give a box of manapua or something like that, $25 or less. And now they have come back to say like, no gifts, not even that box of manapua or the little bento or something like that. And so public officials know they are not to accept gifts, but oftentimes nonprofits don't understand this and they do give it. And sometimes there's confusion around like inviting someone to your fundraiser dinner, right? So that seat is considered a gift. So you may not invite a legislator. A legislator or a county council person must pay his or her own way, or you know, basically cannot come anymore as a guest. And then here, like, just, you know, there are different, again, thresholds for every county. So this is Honolulu City and County. And you have to register in January. And that's if you're going to show up and testify at city council, et cetera, you should be doing that. And Maui County is slightly different. And here are those links as well. And Hawaii County, same thing, and they have their county code and their thresholds, which are slightly different, and definitions of who is a lobbyist. And then Kauai County, and they have a threshold of 750. They have their links, and of course it's the 5 hours in any reporting period, any month of any reporting period. Okay, so those were just some brief, all to say that if you're doing statewide advocacy work, it's really important to track the different laws of federal, state, and county, and they all kind of define lobbying in different ways, and so you have to track it in different ways, which is really humbug. Any questions? Because that was kind of technical. This is a good time to get out those snacks or alcohol or whatever to keep you going. I'm curious, is there anybody out there who would want to brag that they are actually tracking federal, state, and county and reporting accordingly? Anybody doing statewide work or multiple county work? Okay, I will continue on. It's important to really stay nonpartisan in this work. So we, as nonprofits, as charitable 501c3 organizations, we may not endorse candidates. Sorry, cannot, not may not. We cannot hold nonpartisan voter registration drives. Sorry, we cannot hold partisan, sorry, I think that's wrong, hold partisan voter registration drives. They have to be nonpartisan? Well, basically, they have to have nothing to do with the party. Basically, if you're encouraging voter engagement, you're really just signing people up to register. You're not signing people up for a candidate or for a party. You can hold candidate forums, but you have to invite everyone and not just the top 3. You have to invite everyone who is listed on the ballot and all parties. That's the only way that you can have a candidate forum if you're a 501c3. And as I mentioned before, you may support ballot measures. You may introduce ballot measures. And you just have to report that to the IRS, but you are able to do that. And of course, no electioneering, no endorsement of candidates. Many charitable nonprofits actually form the 501c4 entity, which does allow you to endorse candidates. And so some organizations here in Hawaii actually do have the 501c4 and move all of their political activity to that entity. And they keep the firewalls up between the 501c3 and the 501c4. And the 501c3 continues to do the mission work, right? And it's clean. And boulderadvocacy.org and nonprofitvote.org are great resources actually to understand how to do these things within the law. And this is just an example of something we participated in I can't remember, was it 2016? But a voter engagement and candidate forum for gubernatorial. And so we invited all candidates and we had our campaign. We did this with a bunch of other partners, nonprofit partners, the No Vote, No Grumble campaign. And this is a sticker that we used. I work for a nonprofit and I vote, and just encouraging, our sector probably, we have constituencies, clients that we serve who may not be voters. And so we're primed, we're in a really strategic position to actually encourage voter engagement and voter registration. And so this is where we sit at Hano, is really encouraging our organizations to encourage their clients to actually get registered. Okay, before I go into this part, how many of you actually need to, Jen Boulder, would like kind of this primer? How many of you are doing work at the legislature? How many of you have, like, let me know if you've shown up at the Capitol to do any kind of work, testifying, talking to legislators? It's a shy group today. I know I've seen Adrian down there on opening day, probably. Okay, well, I'm going to assume that people need this primer. Oh, thank you. Okay, so
Yeah, looks like a few people.
People are doing this work. So I'll kind of gloss through this. How a bill becomes a law, so there's 2 houses, House and Senate, and a bill will originate sometimes in both or sometimes in one. And they make their way, say it's a bill that's introduced in both houses, so the bills make their way through committee hearings. If you get one committee hearing, that's awesome. You have a good chance of getting moving the bill through each house. If you have 3 or even 4 committee assignments, it's not looking good for you. It's just really hard in the course of the time frame to get your bill through all of these committees. So the bill makes its way through each house, and then it crosses over in the middle of the legislative session to the other body, and the other body hears that bill, and there have been modifications being made, and that second body will make more modifications, and then it crosses back to the originating house. And then any kind of disagreements between the houses of the kinds of changes they each made will require them to come together at the end in like a common conference committee in which they have to hash out all those differences. And if it can survive that process where they come to some agreement about that and consensus, it can move to the floor, back to the floors of each of the houses to be passed out. And then it goes to the governor for signing, and then it becomes an act. So the bill will experience a lot of, it's a big involved journey, and it can be very frustrating. I mean, we often hear from nonprofit advocates that you could take it all the way to conference committee and it could die in conference committee because they just couldn't agree on a consensus. Or it could go all the way to the governor and the governor decides not to sign it. So there's a lot of hand-holding and delicacy that involved, and patience in shepherding basically these legislations through the process. So it's not for the faint-hearted is what I'm trying to say. Here's the legislative calendar. It always opens on the third Wednesday. These are usually the deadlines for bill introduction, first crossover, second crossover when the bills go back to their originating bodies. The legislature usually always adjourns in the first week. Sometimes they might go into an emergency session immediately or even later in summer, and that depends on the issue. The capital.hawaii.gov is a great website. It's an award-winning website for transparency, for all the information you need, for learning the process. Yeah, it's a great website. There's a sunshine law that requires a posting of the agenda, a couple days before the hearing. So it's very hard. It's very quick. It's very hard to track this. We encourage everyone to do a lot of the ho'omali and the relationship building in the interim between sessions, because session is so crazy and so fast, and it's hard to get on legislators' radars when everybody else is trying to do the same. And so use that interim period of May through December to build your relationships, basically. These are just like, HB means House Bill, SD means Senate Bill. When there's this HD1, SD2, CD1, that means the House draft, there's a House draft attached to the original. The Senate has attached its draft, and sometimes it's gone through 1 or 2 versions, Senate draft 2, and then conference draft, right? So it's when they've taken it and they're hashing out the differences. There could be Senate draft 1, Senate draft 2, etc. So that's just the cryptic code. The bill is given an assignment, a number at the beginning. Every legislature is a 2-year process. So if it's a second year of the biennium, you actually could hear a bill again. The same bill is brought up in the second year. If it is the end of the biennium and going into a new one, if your bill doesn't survive, it's dead. You need to resurrect. You need to create a new bill for this new 2-year process. Resolutions bills usually are asking for serious like policy change, money requests. Resolutions are more like statements, or maybe it's asking for a task force to be assembled, etc. But resolutions don't ask for money in them. And so that's HR is House Resolution 1, SR is Senate Resolution 1. They can be in one chamber only, or they can be in 2 chambers. And that's when you'll see HCR, concurrent resolution, or SCR. So that means it's traveling through both chambers. Yeah.
I don't know if you want to take this question now, or
Sure.
maybe you're coming to it, but Sid is asking, do we know what's happening with the gut and replace?
Yep.
Right?
So gut and replace cannot happen. I believe there was a Supreme Court ruling. I think it was a Supreme Court, and somebody else out there might know better than I, that basically determined that gut and replace is illegal. And so this is a big win for good government advocates, including Hano. We advocate, what we stand for is transparency, consistency, and accountability. We're really trying to hold our public officials accountable. And when things like gut and replace are utilized, it just really challenges the trust that we have in the process at the legislature. If your vehicle you're taking it all the way to conference and someone guts it to put in something else that they want because they're horse trading, it just really subverts and I think, challenges the process and the faith that we have in this sort of, that this should be a democratic process. So I'll get off my soapbox. Yes, it basically passed. Totally good news. I know good government advocates have been pushing for that for years now. So, okay. Really just some tips, some pro tips, you know, like ways in which you can participate. You know, we talked about introducing bills, testify or resolutions, testifying. You don't have to be the introducer. You can show up and provide support. In the pandemic, everything's been by Zoom, which has been really unsavory. I mean, it's just not the same to testify in Zoom. You know, because I'm not sure how things are going to be at the Capitol this coming 2022 session, depending on, you know, orders, social distancing orders and other types of things, and Omicron and those types of factors that might affect whether the legislature's open this year. And not sure just yet. But reaching out to your legislators, reaching out to the governor or even the cabinet, so the department heads, mobilizing others, using the media as a way to share what you're up to, doing a public education campaign. So these are all just great ways to participate. You know, legislators are busy, so be clear, concise with your contact information and just being very succinct, but also reminding them that they work for you. So I don't want to say kowtow to them by any means. They work for you. And so at the end of the day, especially if you're in their district, you know, I think you should be approaching them accordingly as a constituent that wants to give them feedback as to what you would like to see happen in your community. Tips for lobbying: really, really understand, do your homework before you even get out there. Know that this is a really onerous process, so staying flexible, knowing what your end game is, but also understanding what plan B is and having that in your back pocket. You don't have to tell everybody what your plan B is, but definitely having a plan B. Knowing your friends, knowing your enemies, but also sometimes your enemies from last year might be your friends this year. So basically accepting that you will have strange bedfellows sometimes, and being really open and adaptive and agile in the way that you work with networks to actually coalition build and do this work. You know, not asking you to be fake, just asking you to be pragmatic, really. Creating awareness, acting quickly. I mean, this advocacy work, again, is not for the faint-hearted. You have to move very quickly so certainly legislative session is fast. Keeping an open mind, not being discouraged. As I've said, sometimes it can take decades. These things take time. And finally, just some resources. Again, I talked about the award-winning legislative website. It's really, really, you know, a breath of fresh air, frankly. It's very easy to navigate. I'm not very tech savvy, and I can navigate this very easily. There's always lots of good information, deadlines, calendars, you know, how to reach people. If you want to look at archives, there's a lot of historical stuff that you can find. So yeah, good keyword search abilities. It's a robust website. The public access room is on the 4th floor of the Capitol, and they're a great resource. They're always willing to, very friendly, very willing to share their mana'o and just have a lot of it. And they do a lot of workshops. Oops, this is an old slide. It says our workshops for 2018. Probably have to refresh that. But yeah, they're a wonderful, wonderful resource. And then other advocacy resources, as I've mentioned. We do have a on-demand webinar on our website on Advocacy 101, which is a lot of this information. So no need to do it again, but let your friends and board members and staff know. And then all of these links for the laws. And finally, your voice is needed. And we want to make sure, again, that three-legged stool is even, there's representation, we're all connected, making sure nonprofits are at the table and not on the table and what's for Thanksgiving dinner. I know we just had Thanksgiving. So we always say, like, when we're left out of the room, sometimes we're, you know, we're given, because we're not there to represent, we are often given the short end of the stick. So we need to represent. And that's my presentation. Thanks for weathering it through it with me. Any questions?
Or any more in the chat, Lisa?
Okay.
But let's open it up for people to ask any other questions on any of the 3 sessions that we've had.
Yeah, definitely not just mine.
Thanks, Kristen. That's great information. Mahalo. Yeah, yeah, exactly. Thanks everybody for hanging out and staying with us.
It's not for it wasn't for the faint of heart to stick it out with us here.
We like to call ourselves nonprofit nerds, so maybe all of you are fellow nerds with us today. Thank
totally
you.
riveting to me, but maybe snoozerville for you guys. But yeah, all necessary information. So I don't know if we're going to get into trouble because we're a half an hour early, or does this, like, I don't know, Leilani, sorry, we a little short of our commitment for this 3 hours till 4 o'clock. Are we wanting just to give people a break, or like we could sing songs? I don't know what you like do.
The old Schoolhouse Rock videos.
Yeah.
I'm just a bill. Yeah, I'm
That's
only a bill. And I'm sitting here on Capitol Hill.
Oh, cool. Okay, Leilani. Oh goodness, Shireen just showed up. Well, Shireen, everything, all slides will be available to you. I know we were competing with a lot of really excellent other conventions, so all slides are available. And
Shireen,
this
if
is
you want to
recorded.
put your email in the chat, if you feel like doing that, we'll send you the slide decks.
I guess the question I have, people are maybe jumping to others, but are you more likely to do this work or less likely to do this work after hearing about some of the advocacy compliance? Oh, thank you, Shireen. Thank God. Oh, I think we lost Leilani. Okay, awesome.
Ginger says just as likely, and yeah, Sid, more likely and with more confidence. Yay.
Wonderful.
Excellent.
Okay, well, I don't know, maybe Leilani had to jump to another. Oh, there she is.
Hi, so sorry.
Leilani.
Hi, no problem.
Yeah, so I mean, mahalo for everything. That was very informative for nonprofit. It was a lot to take in a you know. So why don't we
Yeah.
just give you guys some time to like let people ask questions, and yeah, that extra time might be the perfect time to let it all happen with the questions coming in. But I do want to just ask a kind of broad question of, what brought you to this work? What brought you to Hano? Why are you choosing nonprofit over for-profit or a, yeah. So if you guys could answer that each at a time or all together, I think that can start getting people's minds and questions going.
Yeah, that's a great question. Thanks, Leilani. Jen, Melissa.
You want me to start?
Sure.
Okay. Well, since I've been with this organization for 21 years, and was with another nonprofit and another nonprofit before that. Obviously, I must love nonprofits. I think what brought me to the work was actually sort of, it wasn't planned. I started working at the Hawaii Institute for Continuing Legal Education many, many years ago when it was housed at the law school. And it was my first experience in the nonprofit world, but it was working with attorneys. So it was a little bit of a different experience, but wonderful nonetheless. And then when I started working with, I worked with the Hawaii, I guess it was called the Hawaii Loan Fund, and then started working with Hawaii Community Services Council, which became Hano. I realized that I really did love this work. And I think it's the people, really. I mean, it's everybody who has a heart and who really cares about what's going on in our communities. And working with people like that, really, you can't have a bad day. Sometimes you get a little down, and sometimes you kind of wonder about these systems that are broken. But then I have somebody who talks to me and shares about something wonderful they've done in their organization with the communities they serve. And that is like completely rewarding for me. So, yep, I will continue to do this work as long as I can. And we all know it's not for the money. It's not because we get paid the most, but it's because it's really, really rewarding, valuable work to do.
Mm-hmm. I'd have to echo that. Definitely rewarding, and starting off in federal government, seeing so many nonprofits come in with all the needs across the board.
Is your mic on?
Oh, yeah. So I think others can hear me, but for some
Got
reason.
it.
Okay. But yeah, just saying, working on the federal government side and seeing a lot of nonprofits come in and asking for assistance. How do you go after different grants? How can we plus up different streams of funding like Head Start and childcare and all these other things and environment? Kind of starting off on that side. Then I went to a national nonprofit for youth mentoring and saw how the work was done there, and then brought them on as my first client over on the private sector side. So I am at a for-profit, I had been since 2008, and now here on Maui, helping nonprofits. And it's just, I love being in this space and being able to help, regardless of mission. Really, it's just, it's been very rewarding.
And for me, some kind of a similar trajectory to Jen's, where I've spent most of my career in the nonprofit sector, with a brief stint in public relations. And I had a lot of for-profit clients, and I realized kind of like when I had a for-profit client, I was less enthusiastic, let's say, to get that for-profit client publicity, unless I noticed this for-profit client was putting together like a dinner that, proceeds were going to go to a charitable organization. Then my heart perked up, I got excited again, and I kind of realized, wow, I think I have to head back to the nonprofit sector again with my tail between my legs, because I actually, it required me stepping out of the sector and doing this different work to actually really understand where my heart was, right? Which is mission-based work, and being able to get up every morning and, with a step, hop in my step, because while it is not glamorous work, it's gritty and tough. It's actually so rewarding that it allows me to kind of jump out of bed every morning. And I did also realize in my journey, my career pathway, that I am not the person who is going to be so bold and creative to engage that homeless person on the street as a social worker, or to be dealing with such gritty issues. I was in mental health advocacy for a little while, but that was gritty work, or even like domestic violence, or just some of these, very heartbreaking missions, right? The work of the people, the warriors that are doing this work in these very tough social issues. I just, it was tough for me to be that person. But at Hano, it's sort of like I'm supporting people to be able to do that work, to do their best mission work, and for me to be able to provide capacity support, to aggregate information, to organize, curate information so that they can consume it in easy ways so that they can do their jobs better. was enough for me to feel like I was contributing to the work. But it kind of, Hano kind of speaks to my nerdiness of like the data and the policy work, the government relations, and strategic communications, which were all sort of things that I picked up along the way. And so I just sort of feel like I'm in the right place at the right time and able to help in the ways that I can help. And so it's been very rewarding for me. Yeah, and there's just so much more work to do, right? There's just we'd love to have much more impact here at Hano. So, but thank you for being willing ears and cheerleaders and taking in all this information. And Leilani, what are your aspirations? What are your thoughts about nonprofit work?
Well, I only got so I'm a CNHA staff member right now. So I'm obviously working in a nonprofit, and it's been a wonderful, amazing experience. And I really do like the nonprofit sector. I think it's a great way to be on the ground with people and get to know the community well, you know. There's like not as much as a wall or a barrier in that way, and I'm just coming to love it more and more, but also understand the like difficulties that come with nonprofit organizations. So, yeah, I mean, you know, like me and my friend joke around sometime that we'll create our own nonprofit that so so maybe you'll see that in the future from me. Who knows? But for right now,
Great,
yeah.
great. Learn all
Look
that you
out for
can.
that. You know, I think I know we've only got a few people left on with us right now, but we had said that if there was time, we were going to ask a question about whether anybody hearing all of the things that you heard today, whether any of you think you might have different conversations with your funders in 2022. Sort of, if you had a New Year's resolution about that, what might you do differently going into this next year? So if anybody wants to think about and answer that, we'd love to hear from you. We know that's kind of a bigger question too, so you may not have an immediate answer to that, but we hope you will think about that. And you know, as we said in the first part of the presentation, you know, as we're working to shift those paradigms, you're part of that work. We can't do it without you. So Lisa, I think, put in the chat, we'd always, you know, we're always open to your suggestions, your feedback. If you have thoughts and ideas about how we can do this work better, we'd love to hear from you. So please do email us. I think the folks that requested the PowerPoints, I've sent one batch. I'll send the second batch when we're done here. But our contact information is there, and you can reach out to us if you have any ideas or suggestions.
Anyways, thank you so much for the opportunity and spending time with us today. And hopefully you got at least one or two or more kernels that you can then use to help things be easier maybe on your end.
Agreed. It was a pleasure to be able to be here.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much again, Lisa, Jennifer, and Melissa, for sharing your mana'o. Though it is ending early, it's okay. If you guys have stuff to do, what's going on right now, there's still a session going on about the Red Hill Crisis panel that it seems like a lot of people are switching over to. Yeah, so if you want to leave the audience with closing remarks, last words, and then we can wrap this session up.
Lisa, did you have some closing thoughts?
Just for those of you who caught um, all of the presentations, Jennifer's, Melissa's, and mine, I think a theme that we can thread through all of ours was really, we're thinking about equity. We're trying to restore balance within the sector. We're trying to distribute resources better. Um, and, things like accessing federal grants, having honest conversations about full cost, and being emboldened to talk to our partners about what it means to have our costs covered, all speaks to equity, right? Our ability to pay well as employers, to thrive in this community, um, to distribute resources equally. Things like the platform like Kukulu actually creates equity around those of us who ask and those of us who offer. And we are trying to redefine what abundance is, because there's so much expertise within our sector amongst ourselves, that we can share with each other. And so those, I guess, are the resonant themes that if you missed it in kind of the technical language that we were providing, those are the things we really want you to walk away with, is help us to articulate those values, as you engage with your constituency, in your nonprofit work, because we can't do this just alone, right? We have to all be kind of marching to this drumbeat, around these values in order for the sector to flourish and deliver, right? Deliver quality, for our communities. So I guess those are just my final thoughts of summarization. Anybody else?
Well said.
Yeah.
Melissa, did you have any thoughts you wanted to add?
Well, no, I love those thoughts, Lisa. Great closing thoughts. Just thinking about equity, in a different lens, is Hawaii compared to some of the other states. And, if we can work together and build capacity again for the sector to bring more resources in from national foundations, from the federal government, from other sources, we'll all be stronger here. And that especially is for a lot of Native Hawaiian organizations that can be very distinct compared to nonprofits on the continent, and really showcase the things that you're doing, and revitalizing the culture and the language and all of that. So happy to be a part of that, and happy to provide resources to help with that.
Well said, Melissa. I don't have anything to add. I think we've said it all. Just mahalo. Thank you, Leilani, for all of your help. We were not quite sure. This is a new platform for us that we haven't used before. We weren't quite sure we'd even be able to show you our PowerPoints. So Leilani was here to help us and make sure that we did what we needed to do. So thank you so much, Leilani.
Yep.
Thank you.
Hello. We can, Leilani, we're happy to just hang out here till the end, and then if people come and go and have questions, we'll just talk
Yeah.
story.
Yeah, go for it. I mean,
Yeah.
Do that.
you guys, thank you so much. Your PowerPoint, everything went smoothly. You barely needed me, honestly.
Oh, that's not true.
But yeah,
Mm.
if I don't know if you guys have videos or anything you want to put up on the screen while people
Oh.
pop in and out, that's a good option.
Oh, I wonder if we can show video. Hold on.
You can. So when you share your
Okay.
screen, make sure you click the little share system audio button,
Okay. Okay.
Mm.
and then it will play with it for.
Yeah. Where is our? Trying to find our video. Okay, wait, let me try this. Hold on.
Oh, yeah. See if you can get it to work.
Okay, where did you go? You're here. Oops. What happened? Oh, wait, what am I doing again? Oh, yeah, that's right. Share. No. Where am I bringing up system audio? Under.
If you're doing it a window, it might be
Yeah.
fine. But if you're like sharing it on your screen, like the entire screen, it says like at the bottom, there's a little like checkbox.
Okay, hold on. Let me just try that. Oops, nope. Can you see that? And can
Yeah.
you hear it?
Nope, can't hear it.
And yeah. So are
Oh.
you showing your entire screen right now?
Sorry, yes. Wait,
Yeah,
That's
so
very
go to
that's very
the
Escher-like there. That's cool.
hold on. Hold on. Stop share. Okay, wait a minute. So let me try this again.
So when you pull up the share screen,
Yeah.
do you see
Yeah.
that on the left side, that little option to select the audio?
No.
Hmm.
Share screen. It says select window or screen.
Right. Look at the bottom and there's a little box that says share system audio.
I don't have that.
No? Oh.
No, it just
on a
says
Mac or a
I'm on a
PC.
PC, but it says
Okay.
select window or screen, and then community development breakout and entire screen. And that's it. Jen, maybe you can share it. It's
Well,
the
let me try. Let's see.
video on our Hano website.
Can you see that?
Yeah, but I see your everything.
Okay, hold on.
Yeah, but it's better than mine.
Let's just see. Can you hold on?
Hawaii.
Yes, we can hear.
Most people don't think about the role
Turn it up.
nonprofits play in making the Aloha State great. Nonprofits keep our land clean and our people cared for. We do the work that others won't, but that our society can't function without.
Our sector, the nonprofit sector, we oftentimes get thought of as, a lower level type of organization when we compare ourselves to the for-profit industry. But what we're doing is oftentimes probably the most challenging type of industry out there, from searching for funding to reaching those millions and millions of reporting outcomes that need to happen on a regular basis, dealing with staffing to working with very challenged populations of folks. And yet every day folks come back and do that work. And so, without this community, without those folks, Hawaii would not be where we're at right now.
The Hawaii Alliance of Nonprofit Organizations, HANO, was formed in 2006 to serve the nonprofit sector in Hawaii.
We act as kind of like a trade association, bringing all nonprofits together. HANO is also there to help with training. So if your organization has need for a particular training, such as board governance, HANO can come out and provide that to your organization.
PAC first contacted HANO years ago, and we were wanting to engage HANO for their strategic planning services. We knew that they could support our organization and help our board really get their hands around what are some of the strategies that we should be looking at as we move into the future. So having HANO on board and providing us with some of that support allows us to really take that big picture view of where we should be heading and focus us in that direction.
HANO provides support to organizations large and small, long-standing and brand new.
We started Art Explorium in November of 2012. I just called Jennifer at HANO and introduced myself and just said, I'm starting this nonprofit and here we go. I have attended a few trainings. I went to a on grant writing and different sources of funding in the local community. That was extremely helpful to me. I mean, I remember I left that session and I had this long checklist of things like, okay, I need to make sure I do all these things because that was stuff that I didn't necessarily know about and I don't know how I would have found out about it,
A big focus for HANO is advocating for the nonprofit sector as a whole in matters of public policy.
HANO's really become this voice for nonprofits throughout the state. We're able to speak to government on some of the issues that we have. Take, for example, the tax exemptions that we all receive. Sometimes those things are in jeopardy, and Hano's very effective at being a key player at the table to keep the issue of tax exemptions alive with our city council and our legislature. You know, the fact is that if those tax exemptions go away, a lot of the work that nonprofits do would really suffer, because we're getting an exemption we'd suddenly have to pay for, and a lot of our budgets would not be able to sustain that impact. So that type of policy work that Hano does is key to our back office for our nonprofit operations.
Hano works to unite and support the nonprofit community so we can all do our best work for the people of Hawaii.
Every day I get to meet people who are a part of Goodwill, who have this great story to tell about how Goodwill helped them, possibly with their career, or maybe through our tax clinic, or one of their relatives has been served by Goodwill. And so that's very rewarding for all of us.
Kids, they come here and they don't want to leave. Like, they want to sleep here. They want to spend the night here. They ask me if I live here. If you look around our studio, it's joyful. You know, it's a really great place, and it makes kids really happy to be here.
Every day we're making an impact in the community, and every day you're trying to help someone individually get to where they need to be. And you know that if you're not doing that work, in the long run. And so I think every day waking up and knowing that there are things to be done to improve our families, our children, and better Hawaii, I think is the best thing about my job.
Thanks for
Interesting
letting us
that-
share that video.
that I was able to get that to work, but not the PowerPoint.
What I was gonna say, I was like, how does this work?
How does this work? And I bet you if I tried now, I still couldn't show the PowerPoint.
Hey, Jen,
I
go
don't know
try.
why.
I'm curious.
Oh,
Maybe
okay.
maybe the rain gods, they did their thing yesterday and now you can do it.
Huh.
I'm curious.
Hmm.
Cannot.
I have to reopen it. Hold on. Let's see if I can. Hold on.
Leilani, is this the first time you guys are using Hopin?
This is
How
You
are
know
you
what
finding it overall?
it's very interesting. I think it's doing well to hold the amount of people that we have, and they
Right.
have a bunch of different features that we're trying to utilize, but I'm sure there's more we could be using. So far, very good.
Yeah, we would have actually thought to try and use the polls, if we could have figured that out. That way people could have participated anonymously,
Yeah, that would have worked great for your presentation.
Yeah, we should have
Yeah,
actually
but
tried to figure out how to use polls. And then what I really like about this one is that you can see the chat, even if you join late, you can see the chat all the way back to the beginning, so everybody can have context.
Oh, you didn't disappear, Jen. Awesome.
oh, there we go.
So there are different options that are showing up on my screen now. Maybe you're right, Lisa. Maybe somehow the internet connection wasn't strong enough before. I don't know.
Yeah. You mean because you were seeing, you had different options to show screen
Yes.
today.
Yes.
Yeah. See, so I don't know if it was bandwidth yesterday, maybe because of the rain. Or
Maybe.
last week.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Okay.
we got through it.
Now we figured it out after we're all done.
But yeah, have you guys
So-
been able to go around at all?
Yeah, I have. I liked yesterday's. I think you and I jumped into the film one, and then I was quickly in the Purple Maya, and the one on the Ma'i, the women's health. That was really fascinating to me. And then I loved Esther Kia Aina, like right before our session. She was on fire.
Yeah.
I was kind of sad I had to jump over here.
Yeah, I saw part of that too.
Yeah. And I caught a little bit of the housing conversation at 10 this morning. And then I'm interested in the ones tomorrow. There's something tomorrow on the economy. I know Keone is doing something on the economy tomorrow. So yeah, thank you.
Yeah, it was good seeing Halealoha Aya also and the Indigenous repatriation. So working on a project with him in Australian National University as well. So really meaningful work.
Cool. Wow, you're all over the place, Melissa.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a little bit fun.
Yeah, you got a lot going on. It's a good, but Leilani, it's a good lineup. Yeah, lots of good content.
I'm so sorry, one of the newest added ones took a lot of your people. The Red Hill crisis.
We figured it might.
Such an important topic, and
so critical.
Great that you were able to secure Kaitahele to have that conversation. Yeah, we kind of knew we were up against some big guns. The policy forum, that's a hard
But you guys held your people. You guys did great. And you're still doing great. There's still a couple of people in the chat.
A couple of people hanging on.
The people that needed to be here were here.
And for the people who are here, this was the community development breakout with some speakers from Hano, Hawaii's Alliance nonprofit organization, correct?
Yep.
Yes.
How's the weather? It's really still here, and it's not raining here in Nu'uanu. How about in other places? Is it pouring?
We're okay on Maui.
They're finally okay. It's actually not raining in Maunawili now all of a sudden, but it was kind of lightly raining all afternoon. So maybe we're seeing the moving off of the front at this point.
I'm just wondering if, because it's supposed to move to Kauai, right? Is there anybody still, the 6 of you on the call still, anybody from Kauai, and how is it going over there? I'm worried about the usual flooding that happens.
Yeah, that's a good question because, just recovering from the previous not so distant massive flooding there, I don't think any more would be good.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, it seems still very humid though. Just still and quiet, but overcast.
I think I'm going to jump to the census session after this. It's a Census Bureau, it's a data disaggregation.
Sounds interesting.
So what else is after this? Let's see.
I think that's the only one left, the census breakdown of data.
I believe that's the closing session. and then there'll be a couple more videos to end out the day, and then we look forward to the agenda for tomorrow.
You usually have your basketball tournament when it's in person, right? You weren't probably able to have that.
I would imagine a virtual basketball tournament would be kind of difficult. I'm trying to picture how you would do that.
Well, they have like Facebook games, right? So
Ah,
if everyone just
yeah.
played Facebook games.
Yeah, I guess that's true. That's true. It could be done. All right. So I think Leilani was trying to officially close us out before, and we were still chatting. But Leilani, you want to wrap us?
Yeah, sure. Thank you again for everybody who attended this session. It's great. We hit that 4 o'clock time period. And it was a great talk from Jennifer Creed, Lisa Maruyama, Hamp.
Yeah. There you go.
Yes. And we look forward to seeing their presentations. That if you left your email in the chat, they went ahead and sent it to you already. If you're still interested, you're replaying this session, you can go ahead and contact them at the emails they left within their PowerPoint presentation. Yes, exactly like Lisa said, stay safe, stay dry, and thank you for coming to today's session.
Mahalo.
Okay. Thank you.
Be well. All right, ladies. See you
Okay.
later.
All right. Take care. Bye.
Mahalo,
Bye.
Leilani.
Mahalo.
Bye.
Mahalo.